Hi everyone. Today we're going to talk about first how to bring in a raster image, which is something from, say, the internet, from Photoshop, etc., and how to vectorize it, turn it into a vector image for Illustrator. So the first thing I'm going to do is you'll notice that I have a brand new Adobe Illustrator window open. I have it set to tracing. So the first thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and bring my artwork into the artboard here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on my outside folder here, and I have a copy of Frankenstein here, which I'm going to supply to you guys. And I've got good old Frank here, and notice he's bigger than the artboard. We can see the black outline underneath. So I need to shrink him down. So I'm going to move my cursor here to one of the four corners and make sure I have the black arrow selected. Notice I get the white dots. I get the double arrow there, and I'm going to hold the Shift key, and I'm going to drag him in because I want him to be just inside that space. Okay. Now, as I've got him on here, I want to make a couple of copies of him so I can redo some different experiments with him. It's going to be important for us to do this. So I'm going to go ahead right now, this first image of him, and I'm going to make some copies of him. So I'm going to shrink him down, hold that Shift key and shrink it down, and go right about the size of a good postage stamp there. There we go. And with this size, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make some copies of him. So if I hold that Alt key and then drag to the right, there's a copy of him. Hold the Alt key, drag to the right. Now you'll notice I have 6 copies of him. Well, now I want to make from 1 into 2, I'm going to make 3 copies into 6. So I select all of them. After selecting all of them, then I'll go ahead and hold the Alt key again, and then left click and drag down. And you'll notice that I get basically 3 more copies of it. Boom. So now I made from 1 to 2, and from 3 to 6. Now let's go ahead and make 12. So I've got 6, so I left click and drag a box around all of them. Hold the Alt key, left click on one of the images and drag straight down, and I get 6 more. Look at that. I get 6 more of them there. Fantastic. Now they kind of go off the page a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and select them all and shrink them up. So again, with my black arrow, left click and drag a box around all of them simultaneously, hold the Shift key, and then shrink them up just enough so they all fit onto the artboard. That's what I really am looking for there. Looking pretty good there. I think I can move the row to the right to the right a little bit more. So I'll select them, and I'm just using the arrows on my keyboard just to move those over a little bit, and then I'll move these over just a little bit. And again, I'm having you do this to move this over because this is a good way to get used to moving your pieces around, moving your artboard around. By the way, the arrows on the keyboard, I'm going the right arrow, left arrow, just experimenting to show you here. If I hold the Shift key, again, hold the Shift key and use the left or right arrow, it moves very quickly. It makes it bigger jumps. Whereas if I just use the arrow only, I'm going to release the Shift key and then just use the arrow, very tiny little increments. So it's a nice way to be able to move objects around, be able to select them and move them quickly and easily and move them in batches. Now, I've done this so we can go ahead and have ourselves 12 different instances of Frank because we're going to treat him in 12 different ways. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom in first. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my Control and plus, and then I'm going to go ahead and left click and drag over. Now I've got one Frank right there. So let's start with the first one. So I'm going to select him. Okay, now once I select him, I can go ahead and I have to start converting him into a vector image. Having it selected, I'm going to go ahead and the first thing I'm going to do is on the upper side of the left-hand side of the screen here where I'm circling, it says Image Trace. Now, I want to take you through the different steps of what Image Trace looks like. First off, we have basically high fidelity photo. If I do this one will give me a really high detailed image. Now I'm going to say okay. And what it's going to do is high fidelity photo is that it's going to capture all of the different variations of gray that appear in the image. So the conversion has finished. It is now a vector image. I just have to expand it. And now what it sees is in all these little blue out areas you're looking at are details of little gray tones or little variations of the grays that appear in the photo. So let me go ahead and zoom in to that. So I'm going to go Command and plus, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, and you can see there at a micro level, you can see all the little variations of shapes that are comprised of all of the different gray tones that we see. But if we zoom back out again, we actually have just this blue field that we see of all the colors. So if I click off to the side, we can see that. Now, one of the nice things that's nice to do here, so if I select this and select this character over here, is that now with each one of these can be changed, they can be modified, they can be erased, etc. For example, with my white arrow, with my direct select, I can just left click and drag a rectangle around part of them, hit the delete key, and you'll see it just erases all of those things. So again, it's erasing not by line, but by variation of color, or variation of tone. In this case, the gray tone. So I'm going to go Command Z and bring that all back. Okay, and that was the first one. And this first one was that full gray tone that you saw. It was a full high definition photo. Now I'm going to left click and drag and move over to my next photo here. The next one, which is again got my black, has my blue X on it. I'm going to convert this one and go back up to my image trace. In this case, I'm going to select the next one down, which is my low fidelity photo. So select that one next and say OK. Now with this one, low fidelity photo, this one will get you about 30 or so, 30 to 60 variations of gray. So you won't see an area that's as clustered or as busy as the last one was. This one will be much, much less. Once it finishes processing, then I'll go ahead and last same as before, I'll hit the expand button. You'll notice this time we can see these variations in gray. We see the sort of strata. We don't get that smooth transition like we see on the left here. We get more of a broken image here. So we can see too also on the face that we don't get as much sharpness or detail in the shadows on the face that we had before. So I can go ahead and just hit the expand button, and there it is. You can see now how much more of the sort of larger grays that we're getting with this. Okay. Now, on this third one here on the far right hand side, I'm going to do this again, but this time I'm going to change things a little bit here for you. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and left click and drag a box around it when we've got it selected. But before I do anything this time, last two times I've done use the image trace button directly, and I've used the drop down menu and gone ahead and used these top two. But for this next one, I'm going to use the settings over here on the right. And I'm going to go ahead and change this up a little bit. In this case, what I'm going to do is I've got it set still for low fidelity photo. But what I'm going to do now is when I go ahead and change it now, I'm going to use this button right here. If you remember now, this time on here, when we're using the tracing setting, this little advanced tab, opening it up here, this allows us to go in and to change the quality of the image by using the preview button before we finalize it. So let's do that. I'm going to click on the preview button, say OK, and now it's going to make the adjustments, but they're not permanent like they were before. Take a look at the variations in just the black and white. If we look up here on the right here, I'm looking at just the black and white mode. I can change that now to grayscale as it was before. But again, we're still in preview mode. We're not in our final export yet. So doing this and using this menu here, instead of going directly up here to the tracing result, can give you a little bit more flexibility in the quality of the image that you're working with. So I'll let that finish up here. Now you see we have much more of the gray, but watch what happens now. Now I can use these sliders. Now this upper slider here, this is my main one right here. So I slide it and then let go, and then I give it a moment because I have to let the computer to go ahead and process it. Because remember, it's reconfiguring and measuring all of the little areas of gray and all the different gray tones by area and reformulating that as a mathematical equation. One that luckily we do not have to computate. There you go. See how it's gotten simpler? Now if I take it even further down, this says I'm actually literally saying I only want 9 grays because I literally only have 9 left up here. So you'll see that it'll simplify greatly. And it'll reduce it down to the areas of gray that have the highest quantity. And so you'll see much larger groupings. You see that? There we are again. Now if I take this way, way down again, take that down to 2 or 3 there, you'll see it'll just really pull it down. And we'll give that a moment to process. It's fun staring at little panels go by. There we go. So we got even more so. Now what we can do also is that we have these other little sliders inside here. Paths and corners and noise. Paths are the strokes. They're the strokes or the lines in between each curve. And the corners are where the curves happen. So if we take the paths down low, let's take those all the way down. So we simplify the drawing. So we say that we don't want to have it as realistic as possible. We want to simplify it and strip it down to make it smoother. And by having fewer paths, we'll do just that. It will make it smoother. There we go. Ever so subtly, it's shifted down smoother. Now corners, I'll take those also down. And we'll pull those down all the way. Now by arguably having a lower path and lower corners is a good thing because it will actually give you a smaller file size, which is really nice. But of course, certainly if you need to have something more accurate, then you'll certainly want to go with a higher one. Now noises are kind of like background image. Think of it like dust. If I go more noise, then you'll see more detail come out that's still available within the limitations of the paths and corners. It's almost like fine-tuning. Let's go ahead. Here's my pixel clustering. And it's regrouping and rethinking and smoothing out the paths, fitting out the curves. And there we go. So less noise there. So we've got greater amount of noise there. But then I can take that noise and take it all the way down to the very bottom. You might see different. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. It depends on the drawings. I tend to personally find more of an effect with the noise slider when I'm working directly with a sketch or a drawing that I brought into the program. But generally with photos, I usually don't find that much difference. See, there we go. It's about the same. So let's go ahead here, and I've gone ahead and go less here. Got the grayscale. I think what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and let it happen. So I'm going to say expand. And there we are. So we'll see the clusters there. So if I go ahead and command minus to zoom out, and we see the three of them. So again, this is the highest fidelity, middle, and this is the lowest. And you can see by varying degree how each image gets simpler and has less definition with each progressive turn. And if I left click and highlight all of them at the same time, you can see that in the areas that have been chosen. We can see how the first one is almost solid blue because it's collecting so much data from all the little gray areas. The middle one certainly has a middle amount, and the one where we really cranked everything down low has the fewest number, so we have the largest areas or open spaces and the fewest changes. So I'm going to click off the side here. We're good there. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to scroll down to the next one here. This next row down that's done over here, I'm going to go ahead and click on this guy right here. So he's active. You'll notice I click off the side, all of my selection areas over here on the right have all disappeared. They were all grayed out. But if I activate that photo, I click on it, there, you see how everything came up because it says, we've got something here to work with. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this again. In this case, then, for the image trace, I'm going to go ahead and do, like we talked about before here, the 3 color, the 6 color, and the 16 color. These three are literally the lower version of what lower fidelity is. They literally will only give you 16, 6, or 3. Okay. Now, can you change the sliders within that? Yeah, you can. You can kind of go 1 to 30. For an example, let me do into the 3 color. In this case, the 3 gray. And we'll give it a moment here to optimize itself. And there we go. You can see now that we have just the 3 there by itself. And automatically up here, it actually has chosen itself. It's got 3 variations. We've got our paths and corners and noise. If I want to take those paths all the way down and then give it a second. There, you can see it's actually changed a little bit. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go ahead and do these first 4 on your own. When we come back in the next video, we'll continue with some of the different variations on how the slider and the tracing works. All right, so go ahead and get yourself set up, do those first 4, and we'll see you soon.